Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to
Hello.
our afternoon part of digital learning day. We've had so much going on so far. We will just to wanted to let everyone know that we are recording all the sessions. We will have the presentations ready for you as well. Presentations will come in first, recording will come in a little after. At some point next week they'll release. But we have a lot to cover, not just in digital learning, but also in its application across different contexts. In this session, we have Theresa Sladek. She will be presenting incorporating digital literacy routines into English language learning instruction. She is a she is the strategic partnerships and North Star Business Development Manager at Literacy Minnesota and works with organizations to certain and implement their digital literacy needs. Theresa is the steering committee chair for Literacy Minnesota's Open Door Collective program, which fosters dialogue at the national level between a variety of sectors with collective goals supporting social and economic justice. Prior to this, she developed statewide training on navigation related to adult persistence and learning. Theresa has a bachelor's in biology from Lewis and Clark College and master's in consulting psychology from the University of St. Thomas. She worked as a counselor, project manager, and corporate trainer before joining the field of education. And she's our presenter for today. Thank you so much for presenting for us, and I'll leave you the digital stage.
All right, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see all of you today. And like Jose said, I'm Theresa Sladek, and we're going to talk about how to kind of build some routines into your classrooms. So many of you may have specific classes for learning digital literacy, but oftentimes programs want to just build that into the kind of their normal classes, right? Normal classes of where you're teaching literacy, but you also want to incorporate some digital literacy into those classes as well. So that's, we're going to look at that today, we're going to talk today, especially about for those who are maybe lower language learners, lower English language learners. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of who Literacy Minnesota is, and we'll look at the kind of talk about digital skills instructions and the routines, different ways that you can assess people's skills to see what they might need. And we'll talk a lot about digital resiliency and goals, and then some of the resources that North Star has for you. So in case you don't know, Literacy Minnesota, we are a adult educational basic education provider. We've been around for over 50 years. We're located, as you might guess, in
Minneapolis.
yeah, Minnesota, right? And we actually do have schools in Minneapolis and also in St. Paul. We also do statewide training for providers like you in the state of Minnesota. And we are known nationally for not only North Star, but because we've been doing training for so long for providers in the state, we have a lot of free resources on our webpage that would be pertinent to you. So if you don't use the Literacy Minnesota resources, I do want to show you them. I would say 95% of what's on there is free, and they are accessed by people actually all over the world. So just to quickly go there, I just lost my mouse. Here we go. I'll put this in the chat. I'll put the web page in the chat. But if you go to the Literacy Minnesota web page, and then you go to educator resources. So we just changed our web page. So I'm going to show you this in case, even if you do use it regularly. This is the new web page. If you go to the menu bar over on the right and go to resources, and then for educators, you'll find, if you go to the curriculum activities and lesson plans, you'll find these educator resources. And this is not just for digital literacy, it's for all kinds of things. So you can see that the topics range from math to grammar to reading. And then the levels would be, all the way from pre-beginning. We do have a lot of materials around phonics or helping pre-beginning readers. And they're in a lot of different formats. So we have videos, we have examples of teachers teaching using a specific strategy. We have toolkits. So please feel free to use this and play around in here and see what might be useful to you. But back to digital skills. Why do you think it's important that we teach digital skills? Let's say that I'm a person who doesn't know how to use it, how to turn on a computer. I don't know how to search on the internet. I don't know how to use email. And you can either unmute or you can put this in the chat. What are things that in life that I cannot do if I don't have those skills? What can't I do? Communicate with my kids' teachers. Yep. Apply for almost all jobs. Buy a plane ticket. Yeah. Most jobs do require online applications as well as digital skills. Access telehealth, find information. Just think about all the resources. If I can search on the internet, I have the ability to access just, from my home. Make appointments. Yeah. It helps with education. Sign up for teacher conferences. Yeah, these are great examples. So you can't do online banking or online shopping, which makes life a lot more convenient for people and, save some time. You can't communicate with everyone. So it really is, has been, you may have heard of social determinants of health, and digital skills kind of are overarching all of those social determinants of health even. So it's critical for almost everything we do, which is why we want to make sure that we are teaching the skills. All right, thanks for your examples. So what are the challenges you found in teaching digital skills? What's difficult about it? And again, you can chat or unmute, however you prefer. What do you find? Access to the tech tools and the Wi-Fi for both maybe the school, but also the individual. Lack of background knowledge for the instructor, for sure. That's common. I hear that commonly. The range of digital skills within a class. People who are very low in their digital skills, like maybe they haven't ever encountered a computer and they may not know how to start it. Yeah. Or they might just be familiar with the phone. I do think, again, if you've never taught digital skills, it's just something, that instructors also need some help with teaching that. Old hardware, people don't have computers. Volunteer tutors might not have the digital skills themselves. Oh, that's a good one. Remote teaching is hard to sometimes see what people are doing. Yeah, these are great comments. Thank you. And knowing what to start. I like that too. Knowing where to start and what to prioritize, because as you know, I mean, digital landscape is continually growing, right? And there's no way we can ever teach everything or even know everything. And so how do we winnow that down? All right, great examples. And I think you've hit all of the ones that I had. Sometimes it's about staff time too. How do you fit this into everything else you're doing? We talked about equipment, maybe a language barrier too. Oftentimes the topic of digital literacy seems hard for instructors to talk about to people who are a lower level, like let's say English language learners, or in the case of North Star, Spanish language learners. And we talked about instructor knowledge and differing levels of skill. So great. All right. So what we have found, and you probably all know this, not just with digital skills, but with anything in ELL instruction, routines are really helpful in learning and in teaching. And the reason that some of the reasons that they're helpful is they do, when you have that routine, your learners are anticipating it. And so they expect, okay, at this point in time, we're going to be starting to learn about devices or computers or digital skills. And so that kind of takes off from the way the brain is thinking. It's not thinking, what's the teacher going to talk about next? What do we have to do next? The person knows what's happening next. And so they can really focus more on learning the language or the skill. The routines also really help with vocabulary. And this is something that I find that instructors often maybe aren't aware of or aren't thinking of. There's a lot of vocabulary in digital literacy instruction. We'll look at some of this that ties to other things in our world. So, for example, if you think about how you turn on a computer, some of the words you need to know are on and off, and those words are used obviously in multiple ways. And so the vocabulary of digital literacy is useful in many contexts, but practicing that vocabulary as it relates to digital literacy or anything really helps with that memorization, and it kind of is more a natural way to learn the vocabulary as you're using it. And then, of course, if you have a routine, people are going to feel like more comfortable. They know what to expect. And it will help people feel as they're using the same words and they're talking about it and they're hearing you talk about it. It helps people to feel more comfortable just in expressing maybe their questions or what they don't understand, or even practicing what they do. And so then, of course, all of that helps reduce anxiety. And I don't think I said this in my bio, but my background is I have a degree in biology and then a master's in psychology, counseling psychology. And what happens when you're anxious is that, the neurotransmitters are kind of flooding your brain and effectively kind of preventing that learning. So anything we can do in the classroom to kind of alleviate anxiety is going to help the person absorb the information that we're teaching. And, that's of course what our goal is, right? And especially if you're having to focus on a new language, for example, or a new skill, that does require quite a bit of brain effort. And so you want to, again, be able to focus as much as possible on the learning rather than kind of generalized anxiety. Any of you who have used routines, whether digital or not, any other benefits you've seen, or how you're using them? Again, it doesn't have to be digital. I know when I was teaching, we would always start each lesson with just looking at what is the name of the day, Wednesday, the month, the year, and then the weather. And it would be simple as, I think, sunny, rainy, or snowing, or whatever it was. Anyone else have? Yeah, it does help with, oh, that's a good point. It helps with lesson planning too, because if you know kind of how the flow is going to be and that you're always going to have that, it makes it a little easier for you as an instructor too. I agree. Kevin said that it sets the expectations so you don't have to go over the directions or what you're going to do every time. People just know it, and that's a great way often to start. As at opening and closing time, especially. I like what you said. Students will take up the reins and start their routines and help new students get started, which is also community building, which can create that sense of safety as well. Great. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. Awesome. And you can increase the rigor. That's also very important. you can kind of start, with some of the basics and then increase the knowledge as you go along, as people feel more comfortable. All right, so one way in digital literacy, or in anything, is building routine is you want to, as someone mentioned, you want to choose what topic you're going to start with. And so one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is how do you choose that topic in digital literacy? Where do you start? It's also helpful, especially in digital skills, and you've talked about how a lot of times in a class, people can have a wide range of digital skills. It can be helpful to assess the learners to see where they're at in their digital skills, either one-on-one if you have the time, or volunteer to help, or as a group, just even broadly to get a sense. And one thing that I have found really helpful is in that situation where you do have people who are more proficient in their digital skills than others, it's often really helpful to pair those two up. So the person who knows how to perform the skill already is now the teacher, and then the person who hasn't yet learned it gets more help. And that can help cement, for the person teaching, help cement the skill, because, as teaching, you learn a lot when you have to teach. And then it gives the person who doesn't have the skill yet, they've heard you explain it. Now they're hearing someone else explain it. So it can, help cement that learning. Is one thing you can do. Yeah, and in the chat, routines do help with self-confidence. That is very true, because you know what to expect. So once you've kind of done that assessment, you've decided where you're going to start and where most of the learners might benefit from you teaching. Then you want to think about, when will the routine be? Will it be, like someone said, at the beginning of the class? Will it be at the end of the class? And how often will you do it? Every time you teach, a couple times a week, once a week? And that mostly depends on what else you have going on. It's helpful to do it every day, or at least, every Monday or every Monday, Wednesday, so that people know when to expect it, which makes it the routine, I guess. Then you are going to want to feel, and I think this is really important, and I think that it's not something that should be overlooked, that when you are new to teaching digital literacy, it can be scary. If you don't know, if you've never taught it before and you're not sure what to teach and you're not sure how to teach it, or your volunteers, that can be kind of daunting. And it can kind of be conveyed to learners too. If you feel a little unsure, then that might make them feel a little unsure as well. So what I always recommend for instructors who are new to digital literacy, or maybe not even new to digital literacy instruction, is to go through, you all have access to North Star, to take the assessments yourself, see where you might need to practice some things or work on some things, and then go through the practice lessons yourself and the curriculum. And if you haven't used the North Star curriculum, I mean, it's very detailed. We give you the words to say. And even if you feel that it's too advanced for the students that you're working with, it will allow you to understand the topic, right? So that you'll have a better grasp of how, not even how to do it, but how to think about explaining it. Because often, for those of us who have been using computers for a long time, we forget there are a lot of steps to using a computer, and we kind of forget that. And so if we're talking to someone and if we use jargon or if we skip ahead, they'll feel more lost. So going through that curriculum does help you think about sort of all the steps that there are, just to help you feel more confident before teaching digital literacy. And I will say, I have yet to meet, and I talk to people all the time, I have yet to meet anyone who's passed all 17 North Star assessments with 100% on the first time. So there's my challenge to you. But it just goes to show that, and this is important to impart to learners too, digital literacy is lifelong learning. No one knows everything. We're all always learning. And so there's going to be times when you are learning with the class. And that is a really great thing to show how you approach a problem or how you try to solve something in digital literacy that you don't know, because that everyone will encounter that, right? All right. Yeah, great. So I see some great comments in the chat. Um, once you feel comfortable, you have the instructional material, which I'm going to show you, then you're going to guide the learners through the routine and then kind of review. And someone mentioned self-assessments in the chat, but kind of assess their own confidence in the skill is a great way to help people feel that they have accomplished something. All right. And I think someone mentioned Mentimeter. That's great. Okay. Good comments in the chat. And then one thing that's really helpful in digital literacy is then to take the skills and put them into an authentic context. So let's say you're teaching someone how to use the internet, and they have learned how to go to a browser, how to type in words. Well, then having them actually look for something that they'd be interested in is going to help them learn that skill and see the value of the skill. And, sometimes maybe if not just, but if you're teaching someone how to turn on a computer, maybe that's the authentic context would be then you're going to be using the computer in class or something like that. So if you can, building that lesson and then having it being people using it so they see how one might use it in daily life or for education is a great thing to do. Any questions before I go on? Okay. And again, I will show you the routines that we actually have already created for you that you can use, so you don't have to develop them all on your own, but just like to talk about this kind of how to first. So there are a couple of different ways that you can assess the need. Now, obviously, North Star has a lot of assessments. And if you have learners who are kind of at that intermediate English language learning level or higher, the assessments are written at about a CASAS 211, which is about a grade 4 reading level. And so those assessments then would be great. The North Star assessments would be great for people at that reading level. But not all of the learners perhaps are at that reading level. There's still ways that you can get a kind of a feel for what their skills are. One of them is, well, I'm going to kind of go through it like this, I think. The first one I want to talk about is a new North Star assessment, newish, and it was created and piloted in conjunction with Tyson Foods. Linked to the DART curriculum, which Jose said that many of you are aware of and use. So Tyson, in conjunction with Texas ABE, developed the DART curriculum. And if you don't know what that is, it's really that in a manufacturing organization that has plants all over the country, you will have people from many different countries who speak many different languages kind of in the plant. And a lot of the people maybe didn't have formal education in their home countries, or they're just not familiar with even the English alphabet and the keyboard. And yet for many companies, in order for people to access their HR resources, they need to create a password and get into the system. And so what this assessment and what the DART curriculum really focuses on are those really, I would even say pre-digital skills kind of, such as what's the difference between a capital A and a lowercase a? What's an exclamation point? How do I create a password? And if you've used the curriculum, it's very thorough, very goes through things very slowly, which is good. And then the assessment then is created to see if people have those skills or not. And so the assessment was written at a lower grade level than the rest of North Star, less than a third grade level, and often trying to reach it less than a second grade reading level. So this is something that you could use for lower level English language learners or Spanish language learners. North Star is in both languages. And to just kind of see if people have these skills, and great for you to even take yourselves and to use the DART curriculum just to kind of think about, how do I do, even if I do it myself, how do I do comprehension checks to see if people are understanding these various things that I'm teaching. So this assessment, I think, is what you're asking, is free. So the state pays for you all to have North Star. So yes, you can use this for free. And then the DART curriculum, if that's what you're asking for, that is also free. So I will show you too. Let me just put this in the chat. I think that you'll probably know about it, but I'm just going to give you this links page. And then if you click on it, you get to the curriculum. Yeah, that's right. And we at Literacy Minnesota, our instructors use DART too. They love it. So check it out. So what I want to make sure you know about in North Star is how you can find, so everything in North Star is built on standards. And standards are really this, you all know what standards are. And standards help us then create the assessments to see if people have those skills. And then all the education material is tied to the standards. And so one of the things that you might want to do as you're thinking about what routine should I build or where should I start is to look at the various standards in North Star to give you an idea of, well, what are some of the computer skills that maybe we want to think about. And you can find them if you go into your North Star admin portal. You can see in the blue navigation bar on top under resources. And then if you go click on other resources, you'll see that they're the second rectangle there. So let me go here. Sorry, I thought I was logged in, but I must have been kicked out. It'll take me just a second to get there. But you can see here are the standards. So you might say, okay, well, what is in that smartphone keyboard basics and logging in? So you can see how basic it is, right? But teaching these things, you are teaching digital literacy or the building blocks of digital literacy. And so it's important to, you can even do this in conjunction with a pre-beginning class when you're teaching, let's say you're teaching F and J, and you can talk about capital F, lowercase f, show them, have people practice writing them, obviously practice the sounds, maybe words starting with those letters, and then go to something like typing.com, which is a free website, not North Star, but typing.com, and have them practice hitting the F and the J. So you're kind of building all of this in, it's language learning, and it's also digital learning if you talk about it that way. So these are the smartphone ones, but you can look at basic computer skills and kind of think, all right, maybe the class needs to start with how to log on and log off a computer, like you said. Maybe that's where we need to start. Maybe as we talk about different assessments, you've decided that they really need more to learn information on how to use the internet. So this can give you a somewhat idea of some of the skills and places where you might want to consider starting. And then here's an example. This is just an example of the the assessment question. So you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it says tap the lowercase letters. There are 3, then tap next. So it's practicing again what people have learned in that dark curriculum, or maybe what they've learned even with you. We also have some screeners that can let you see what people know, that these are much more interactive and much easier to translate into other languages if someone on staff speaks another language. And these are in your North Star admin portal, again, in that other resources. So if you go to resources, other resources, and these, so here in the blue navigation portal, I am on resources. And then if I go to other resources and scroll down to the bottom, these are the screeners. And so I like these too, if you have people who, again, are lower level language learners, but you want to see what their digital literacy is. And these screeners, again, if you can translate them into other languages a lot more easily. Just give you an idea, do people even know what these things are? Another way you can look at what people's skills might be is just by watching. So maybe you're doing remote, someone said they're doing remote teaching, I think, and you've noticed that people struggle with Zoom. You see that's a need. We have created these short 7-minute videos that are intended for learners that can help teach those kinds of things. So if you look at North Star, this can be another routine that you would build if you go into the North Star curriculum. And the 4th bullet point down, entry-level digital skills building. So this is a great, like if you have a class that could use these skills and you think they're appropriate, you can build this into routine. Like maybe you watch the one on Zoom, and maybe you watch it a couple times, and have people answer the worksheet, and you go over it, and then you practice that in class. Or if you're remote, or even if you're not, you could do some practice, or using WhatsApp, for example. So these might be things that people are already using, the smartphone apps, and kind of getting people into the idea of studying digital skills. All right. Oh, all right. So, and then with the routine, the actual routines that I want to talk about, we also do have rubrics for assessment that kind of go along with what you were talking about, where people are somewhat self-assessing on their skills. And you can either do this assessment first, or you can start teaching the routines and then kind of do the assessment afterward, or both. It's really up to you. But I want to show you where you can find them. So in your North Star admin portal, it would be, I'm not really showing it on my screen, but it would be under the curriculum. And again, it would be right under the video tutorials. It's this last bullet point that says routines. And here it gives you a resource. There is going to be a teacher guide. We'll look at all these things, the actual routines, and then the rubrics as well. So I'm going to take you there in just a second. But before I do that, before we kind of delve into those routines, I want to talk about digital resiliency. And hopefully you've heard the term, but really it's the idea that, again, you can't possibly know everything in the digital realm. No one can. What you need to, and however, many people think that unless they're specifically taught something, they don't know how to do something else in the digital world. So let's say someone taught me how to use Word, and then I was going to use the Google Drive, Google Docs, and I have heard people say, well, I don't know how to use this. No one's ever taught me. Well, the fact of the matter is I can figure it out because I know Word, right? I know Docs, I know Word, and I can figure out that Docs is a similar program, does similar things. I should be able to, bold in Word is similar to bold in Docs, and I can figure that out. But what we found is you need to initially specifically spell that out to people so that they know that if you're teaching them how to use Zoom, that you're not just teaching Zoom, but you're teaching them in general how to kind of figure out video conferencing platforms. And even though their specifics are different, the idea can be transferred so that people can figure it out. So there's a lot of problem solving in learning digital literacy. And so the more we as instructors can talk about how to what we're teaching people can be transferred across devices. So, if I know how to open a laptop, I turn on a laptop, I can transfer that skill to turning on a computer. How they can be transferred across situations. So uh, if I'm using email to email my teacher, I can also use email to email my child's teacher, for example, or just making sure that you're making those connections for people and be very explicit when you talk about that. And then I mentioned before that there's things that we don't know. People are going to ask you to do something. I even get asked how to do things sometimes in North Star, and I have to say, well, let's take a look at that because maybe it's something I don't normally do. You want to feel all right to model how you go about that process and talk about it. So you might say, I don't know, let's investigate that together. I would start by looking at in this area because in my experience, XYZ, and really talk out loud your thought processes and even have the person who has asked the question, maybe they will want to provide input on how to solve the problem too. So you really want to make it clear that there can't be formal instruction for everything we do in digital literacy, and that the skills are transferable, and there's a kind of a way to think about how to solve problems. So that's really kind of critical in this topic. Digital literacy is a topic like any other, like food or clothing or what have you. It has its own vocabulary, it has its own items, and this piece is a little bit different in terms of that resiliency. Are there any, I'm going to stop for a second. Any questions or comments about that or where you've seen it in practice? Okay. The other really important thing to think about when you're planning to teach digital skills is to think about the learners, right? I see something in the chat, so I just want to check that. Yeah, thank you. So when you're talking about digital literacy, why would learners want to learn these skills? Like, we have talked about why it's important, but sometimes I have seen programs. In fact, there was a ABE program in a different state that was advertising that they had digital literacy, and they advertised it as help learn jobs skills that will help you find a job or something like that, which is true. Digital literacy does help you do that. And they weren't getting any takers for the class. And I said, well, do the people want to get jobs? And they said, oh, and they went back and asked them, well, a lot of them were stay-at-home parents who didn't plan to get a job. When they started saying this can help you talk to your child's teacher, who all of them were parents in this case, then they had a huge number of people signing up. So you have to know why this is important, that learners would want to learn it, and talk about that and continue to talk about how that might help. Yeah, I mean, definitely it's necessary to function, And these people are getting around without it. So if you don't know what you don't know, right? So kind of matching up what might help people's lives be easier or more quicker or whatever it would be, making sure that the learners are buy in to why you're teaching it by matching it up with their goals. It's also really helpful to relate it to whatever else you're teaching. So again, I think about if I'm teaching how to start a computer and I'm teaching the words on and off and the power button, then it's really fun in the classroom to go around and let's say we're learning about prepositions. What are other ways you can use the words on and off in different settings, and just kind of bringing that in to it, or turning on and off the lights in the classroom, or whatever it is. But however you can connect the things that you're doing in the routines to whatever else you're teaching is going to be beneficial to the people in the classroom. I like this in the chat. Pamela was saying that some people don't know what digital literacy means. Some people who have been in this country for years don't know what digital literacy means. So listing the skills that you might learn through digital literacy, or maybe even what you could do with it, that's a really great idea. How it can help people. And then you can also incorporate, as people get more adept at digital skills, you can incorporate those into the rest of the lesson. So for example, I was teaching it was like a pre-GED class, and one of the weekly routines was to learn, I think it was 3 vocabulary words. And then you had to put the definition, the student had to put the definition, and then use it in their own sentence. And the way we made it digital was they had to email it to me. So they would investigate the word however they wanted, put the definition, and come up with their own sentence, but then they'd have to type it into email and send it to me. So we had learned how to send emails, and then we were putting that into practice, really practicing the vocabulary words that had nothing to do with digital literacy, but using the digital skills to kind of keeping those digital skills fresh and how you might use it. So you can kind of think about how you might incorporate those into the rest of your lesson to make it more interactive. All right, so let's look at the routines. I am going to show you the basic computer and internet basics routines. This is a good place to get started if like you said, if I don't know where to start, or even if you have a class where some people know these skills, learning the vocabulary that goes along with it is really helpful, because a lot of times people will come from, let's say, another country. Maybe they've been very fluent in digital literacy, but they may not know the English terminology. And that's just as important to them, like in terms of if they're looking at jobs or talking to people here who don't speak their original language, they're going to want to be able to know what those words are. So they can help sometimes teach the skills to people in the class, and they're also learning. I have on here that using email is being developed. I actually just found out today that it is completed and under review. So that should be available within, I'd say, the next couple of weeks in North Star. And then just to let you know that the way we created these, the North Star team initially created them, but then we worked with a lot of adult basic education instructors around the country to pilot them and kind of, massage them so that they are what they are today. So as we sort of saw, they do include a teacher's guide. They are quite easy to use, but the team that I have they're all educators. They've all taught adult education, and they are great at providing a lot of resources and detail. Then there's the routines, and then there's the rubrics, which we'll look at too. So these are the routines that are available today. And, there's the get to know your device. So that's really looking at, we'll look at them, but what the name of what a device is, what's a laptop versus a computer. There's the mouse practice, which is a kind of a fun one, and the keyboarding. So, but let me take you there. So where you're going to find them is in your North Star admin portal. And I want to go out and just show you this because just in case you don't know, let me see where. Okay. So I am here in the North Star admin portal. In the blue navigation bar, I'm going to go to curriculum. And then the routines again are the 5th bullet point down, the last bullet point. So this is where you're going to find the routines. And I'm going to go here because I think it might give me, maybe it goes back to that same place. I guess it does. All right. So the routines then, they are a PDF. And what it looks like is this. So, kind of talks about why to do this. Here's the table of contents, and you can see some things in here, but I want to show you the routines. This shows how they connect with North Star. So the English Unlocked curriculum is something that Literacy Minnesota also created. But if you look on the far right, these are how these routines, where you can find the kind of expanded lessons in North Star, okay? So you can see that these routines are pulling from, looks like lessons 1 through 8, different things. So oftentimes, even if the lesson itself in North Star is a little too complex in language, terms of language, it's helpful as an instructor to just go in and read it to give you some more context in using the routines. But what they look like, they're actually PowerPoint slides that you can edit. And this is really important because the people that you are working with much better than I know them. And so there are going to be things where you might want to change something or you might want to add something. And so these slides let you do that. So think of these and all of actually North Star curriculum as a kind of a roadmap or guidelines. And again, you're going to tweak it to fit the circumstances you're in, the people that you're working with, the classroom even itself. And I know that I've talked to some instructors who feel like if they can't do it exactly as it's written, they're not going to do it. Don't feel that way with North Star. All right. So you can see we're going to look at the mouse routines. And it talks about, it gives you, this is what we're going to learn. And what I want to look at here is, as you're thinking about the people that you're working with, the students that you're working with, how you might use this or change it to meet their needs. So this is assuming that, I kind of jumped ahead. This is assuming that they know what these things are. But as you look at this slide, you can see that it's trying to differentiate between a desktop computer and a laptop computer. Now, someone mentioned that they use Chromebooks. So I might put a picture of a Chromebook in there. Or someone said they use phones. So I might put a picture of a phone because that also is a device. All right. And so you can get people practicing understanding what they're using, writing the word, pronouncing the word. Any thoughts or contributions you want to add to that? The other thing to remember is that what learners have told me is they much prefer like if you're doing the routine, repetition. So don't feel like you have to cover a lot of information in any one even week. People really like to go over digital literacy very thoroughly so that they feel competent and confident in their skills. And so sometimes I interact with instructors who are feeling like they have to teach all of this. And it's much better just to teach one thing and again do a lot of repetition than rush it. And the best quote that I've heard from a student was about an instructor saying, she said, we don't learn a lot in any class, but what we learn sticks like concrete. And I'm like, okay, that's great, because that's what we want. And so if you, let's say your routine is that you just show this slide every day for a week, and maybe you change the word to today I am using to this is a, and then maybe you show just a picture of one with the words on it. And then the next, once people get that down, you show the picture of the next one. And that is still learning terminology, learning digital literacy words, and practicing writing, practicing maybe pronunciation. And if, it's always better if you have the actual item. Digital literacy is very hands-on if you have that, but sometimes you don't have access to those. So if that's the case, you do have the pictures. But as we kind of go through the routines, I want to skip down to, I think that this. Well, no, I'm going to go to this one. All right. So one of the things that we need to learn with a mouse, there's a lot of things, right? You think, okay, I'm going to teach someone how to use a mouse. And if you've worked with anyone on this, even if they're just trying to access another learning platform, let's say, using a mouse is not intuitive. It's a skill that has to be learned, and it's a fine motor skill. And so one of the first things you could do, and I'm going to kind of put this out to all of you. So when you are, let's say, teaching the word mouse, it, always helpful to have the actual device, right? But you could have a picture. And how could you, let's say you're learning about animals, or maybe even about apartment problems. How could you connect the word for this piece of equipment with those broader topics? What's the connection? Why is it called a mouse?
Because it's got a string attached, unless it's wireless.
Yes, that's great. So it's oftentimes what instructors will do is they'll show a picture of the old-fashioned mouse that has the tail, right, that connects to the computer, and then the new version of the mouse with no tail, but then a picture of the animal, and say this is how this word connects, and that helps people make that connection. Because if you just say this is a mouse, there's no maybe connection really. It's harder to remember. But if you can make that across, especially if they learned the word for mouse, that can be helpful. Yeah, they do. They did look like small mice for sure. But we don't often think about that anymore. But it's a way to kind of expand that vocabulary and to make those connections for people. Obviously, just learning how to say the word, learning how to spell the word can be great in your classroom. But then if you do have just mice, even if they don't have computers, what's really hard for people is and you probably encountered this, is the clicking and the cadence, the speed that you click. And so, again, practicing the words right and left, and what many programs will do is they'll have like just a piece of paper, like divided in half or something, And people will just practice clicking on the paper, even without doing the mouse first. And then they'll move to the mouse because the mouse got a hold, so it's a little different. And so again, there's always not always, but often ways that if you're finding that people are overwhelmed or they're not understanding what you're trying to teach, you were saying that someone was saying that many of the students had never encountered a computer before. There are often ways that we can break it down into even more beginning steps, if that makes sense. So if you're feeling frustrated or your sense that the students are feeling frustrated, think about, well, how could I bring it down to the prior step? And that's really, not always easy to initially do, but it's often very fruitful once you get to that mindset, I guess. So if we look at this, well, let's say again, actually, I want to go back to something for you. So let's say we're teaching about even how to turn on a computer. And you are showing people this, the power button. Let's say you decided you taught the word power button, you show what it looks like, and you wanted to do a class activity that kind of got people moving around. One thing you can do is to ask where, and you taught maybe on and off, where else in the classroom or in the building is there a power button, or at your home is there a power button? So where could you find a power button in life? Where else do we see power buttons? Oh, I see some things in the chat. Hold on. Coffee maker, TV remote, light switch, on appliances, on your car. So it's really sometimes fun to have these activities, as part of your routine, to have kind of a moving activity where maybe people are finding things in the room, or maybe you have like picture cards that people have to identify. This does have a, like I'm thinking of even like the CAPTCHA thing, where it's asking you where there's a bicycle, but similar to that. So kind of making it a fun way to cement that learning and broaden that learning. Okay, those are great examples. And then you can see here, maybe this is too difficult, right? It's saying the power button is under, they have to fill in two things. So maybe you make it easier by you've taught maybe just under and on top of, for example, and just having those, well, I don't know if it would be, those be maybe next to. And then maybe you have on the keyboard that you're using, you show that it's on mine, it's next to the asterisks. So maybe you just show that picture and you have the asterisks here where it says and you put a picture of the asterisks, and then they have to fill in, is it next to it or is it under it? Maybe you just give two choices. So you can modify this to fit the class you have. Now, let's say you have a class that their reading is fairly strong, then this might be an easier exercise for them, or you can make it even more difficult. So again, when we think of the routines, you want to remember that it's okay to kind of go over the same material a couple times. And you also know that, there's always the issue of people missing a class and, trying to catch everyone up. And for the people who have got it, starting the routine with a student leading it, right? So a student saying, in this case, where is the power button? And maybe you have people answer in unison, or maybe they write it, but giving also that chance for those who know the skill the opportunity to kind of lead a little bit, especially if they know what to expect. Yeah, right. A source of power or inspiration. If you have an advanced class, you can even talk about, all right, power turns on the computer. What else does power mean? Completely unrelated to computers. So there's a lot of ways to help make these connections for people while you're still teaching digital literacy. So that's some ways to, start out at very basic levels. And that's usually what I get asked about in terms of digital skills, are these really basic kind of where do I start questions. But another thing that's helpful is, so again, let's go back to our mousing example. When you are teaching mousing skills, there are several different cursors that come up when you're using a mouse. And that's important for people to know and important for you to teach. So what I was showing you before, I think, I just find that slide. My computer's thinking. In this case, you can see that if you kind of hover over something, it gives you the hand shape. This is something that I will say confuses a lot of people, the different shapes and what they do. So it's worth spending time on, I think. But you can, make that hand shape much bigger. You can have people practice hovering, and just, this goes through the practice so that you can do this all together if you all have computers, and you can practice showing the hand shape. And it's really great to do that. Another way that you can practice these skills is with the North Star practice lessons. We refer to them as NSOL, which is North Star Online Learning. I like to call them the practice lessons, but you can use them for practicing skills. So even if they're too difficult in language wise for learners to use on their own, this is something that you can do together. So, for example, with the mousing skills, if we go into the practice lessons, I'm going to go into the basic computer skills because I know that's what the routines were tied to. And then I'm going to go and I see that these bullet points are all the standards. And so one of the things I'm working with my class on is how to identify these mouse pointer shapes. So I'm going to click on that. And this might be something that let me turn that off. This is something that I'm working on, with the whole class. So what I would do first, after we did that routine where we looked at what does the hand do to hover, this is a great way to practice that. So first I would show the class, I'd be projecting this screen and I would show the class what I'm doing. So, I'm using my mouse and I'm moving it over each door. And you can even incorporate the names of the colors here. So you can use this as teaching names of colors, the word door, but I move it over the door. And once I have successfully hovered over the door, a picture shows up. And, each one has their own picture. So first I show it, and then I would have the class help me, right? So I'm still in control of the mouse, but I am saying, it's again a good way to build vocabulary just in general. So maybe you could say this is yellow is bees, orange is flowers, blue is ocean, green is money, and red is stars. I might have them ask me, call out a color. Maybe they call out a color and I have to go hover over it. Or I might say, which color is the flowers behind? And then kind of practice this. And then I would have them all practice this on their own. So I might, I'd have them go onto the computer to this screen, and I would say, what's behind the yellow door? And then once they hover, they can respond. Now, this is not going to all happen probably in 1 10-minute. This is something that you might do sequentially, getting more difficult. But it's great to do that where you show someone something, then you kind of practice it all together, and then you have them do it on their own. And this particular skill is just as you can see, kind of a fun skill to practice. Oh yeah, so I like that. Pamela was saying that in their digital literacy skills class, they pass around the wireless mouse and the students get to use it, which is a great, if everyone doesn't have their own computer, great way to do it. Yeah. And so then the whole class can kind of see and maybe offer instruction. And the important thing about that is that you're learning the fine motor skill of moving the mouse and hovering the mouse too, as well as the hand, that it looks like the hand. And so there's, then when you do it right, it tells you that. And then another thing you might, this is, what do I want to say? This is teaching this, and maybe you want to teach this in a different way, but then you can go to the next where people practice it. So again, here you're hovering and you see, oh, it's the wheel. You've taught that word. And this is the hand, and this is the I-beam, right? So it's a way to take what you've taught and then have people practice not only looking at it, but the skill of moving the mouse. So I want to know what you're thinking, does it seem that kind of using these routines, maybe using some of those videos I showed you before, or the DART curriculum and the assessing different people, do you feel like you have a place that you can start? Or where might you start? What would be your first step? You could choose to assess the class in some way, which would be helpful. And if you felt that was not easy enough, you could start with just teaching something. So where do you think you would explore starting, or maybe start with yourself taking the assessments? So great, giving a survey to students about what they know. Looking at the DART curriculum, it is very thorough. Yeah, assessing the computer skills. And definitely Jose can help you if you don't know how to access North Star, can help you with that. Yeah, using around email, because that's linked to the TABE and CASAS. The standards, yeah, look at the DART curriculum, great. And then, like I said, I should go back, but North Star also has, if your people are beyond the DART curriculum, we do have the North Star curriculum. So here again, for basic computer skills, if you're teaching the class, there's a scope and sequence that would show you in the third column all of the standards that are taught in basic computers, for example. And then if, let's say, we're going back to I want to teach the different mouse pointer shapes, which is standard 6. Then I can go over here to the far right and say, okay, standard 6 is in lesson 3. And then you would have, all the vocabulary words, kind of all the tools, we give you all the handouts, but more importantly, we walk you step by step by what to say and what to show. So this can be used in conjunction with those routines just for yourself. If you think this is, again, the language is too difficult, it gives you an idea of what what you want to talk about. Oh, great. I'm glad that people love the routines. And you log in on the main display, and that's cool. Great. And I do like to have people get up and moving. I think that's important. I think repetition is really important. I guess I didn't show you the routines. I'm sorry, I didn't show you the rubrics. So really quickly, I will show you what those look like. Let me see if I can find them. Just clicking around because I'm trying to find them quickly. But if we go to the routines, again, that same bullet point, there are the rubrics here too, which are more that self-assessment rubric. And so here, let me find, well, here it lists where they are connected to CCRS, but then the rubric is right under the title. And you'll see that it looks like it's kind of an activity. Speaking of that moving around activity, what it is, people kind of go and they say, they move around and they have to practice asking people, ultimately they answer this initially for themselves, but then after they've learned it, they say, can you turn on and off your device? Can you show me how to do it? And then they write the person's name down who showed them. And so it kind of gives them a way to practice interacting, speaking in English, and also practicing this digital skill. So I know we have like a minute left. And so I just want to leave you, with, make sure once you teach something, then build on that. Repetition is the key. Slow is better. And make sure people know that it's fine to try and not get it right. They're not going to break your computers. They're not going to blow things up, which people are often afraid of. So encourage exploration. And we've talked about, I think, all these things. And so I want to turn it over to Jose to close us out.
Thank you so much for sharing these resources with us. There's always something that we keep exploring and digging into North Star. There's like so much that you can do and so many ways to use it. So it's very exciting to get this approach as well, on how to build this routines, aligning to the standards, and kind of doing that continuation across our. We really appreciate it.
Right.
We have one last session that's called Digital Literacy and Family Learning, many projects that build skills and create connections. Our presenter is Cassandra Kramer. The session will start at 2:45. Just as a reminder, it's a separate link to this one. So once you sign out, you'll get back in on the final Zoom link to join. And thank you everyone for joining. See you guys in the last session.
Bye, everyone.